stragglers, and we'll get started in the next minute or two. All right, so it's about 1:02 p.m. Central Time. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with our town hall today. So welcome everyone to our town hall, and thank you for joining us today for our 5th town hall of the year. My name is Brittany Wood, and I'll be your host for today's town hall. Now joining me today from our customer care team are Holly Vasich, AJ Ootman, and Jeannie Clark. Today's town hall will only include around 30 minutes of actual instruction focused on advanced imports and circulation windows, leaving the remaining time for you, our users, to discuss. So we really encourage you all to use this time to your advantage, since we do have a unique opportunity today to discuss with other WebCheckout users. This will be our final town hall of the year, so we really encourage you all to take advantage of the discussion portion of our webinar today. If you wish to share, or if you have questions, please use the Zoom hand raise feature, which you can find by clicking participant, or the Zoom chat feature, which you will find by moving the mouse towards the bottom of the Zoom screen. Please be sure to send your chat to everyone if you're using the Zoom chat feature. As a reminder, this webinar is recorded, and for audio quality, everyone is muted. During our presentation, please once again feel free to chat your questions, and our customer care team will address your questions. We will follow up with a link to our recording as well as a chat transcript. Let's get started. All right, we're opening up WebCheckout now, so you should see my screen begin to move. So we're going to begin with a review of one of our newest features, circulation windows. So circulation windows is a new checkout center setting, which became available in version 10. So as requested by many of our users, circulation windows creates user-friendly pickup and return time options within Patron Portal and WebCheckout. You can also define the number of pickups and returns within certain times of days or days of the week. So we're going to take a look at what circulation windows actually look like in Patron Portal and WebCheckout before reviewing how to enable. So we'll come back to this screen in just a few moments. So we're going to open up and take a look at Patron Portal first. And in Patron Portal, circulation windows will create a drop-down list of available pickup and return time options. So you can see all of the available pickup times when I click on this drop-down menu here in Patron Portal. And unavailable times will not display. So if a time is unavailable because too many pickups or returns have been scheduled, those will not display. Now you may have already noticed that as we look at these pickup times, some times are simply not showing. So you can see there's several times that have been removed because there's too many pickups that were already scheduled, such as 10:30 and 11 o'clock a.m. Now this will help to minimize confusion, especially if you're trying to control the number of pickups and returns at your checkout center. Now we're going to navigate to WebCheckout to see what this feature looks like for operators. All right, and I already started creating a reservation, so I'm going to use these breadcrumbs at the bottom of the screen to open up the allocation detail screen. Now in WebCheckout, circulation windows will display in the allocation detail screen when adjusting time on the scheduling tab. Operators can view the number of currently scheduled pickups and returns and the number of allowed scheduled pickup returns on the scheduling tab of the allocation detail screen. So as you can see at 10:30 and at 11 o'clock a.m., So right here, we've already scheduled one pickup for these time slots, and due to our settings, we currently only allow one pickup for each of these settings. Now, operators can still schedule specific times outside of these defined start and end times by clicking on the calendar icon. So this is going to revert to that standard time selector, and operators can simply select any time they want to include. All right, now that we've seen how this feature actually looks when enabled, let's review how to actually set up circulation windows. So we're going to start by reviewing our hours of operation in the Calendar tab of the Checkout Center detail screen. So we're going to navigate to Admin, Checkout Center, and click on our Calendar tab right here. So circulation windows will only be included for times that the Checkout Center is actually open according to our Checkout Center calendar here. Additionally, we recommend reviewing your calendar first to ensure that you have circulation windows enabled so that they cover all of the days and times that your Checkout Center is open. Any dates and times that are not covered by circulation window settings will not be available as an option in the patron portal. Keep in mind that this can be overridden though in WebCheckout. Now let's actually enable circulation windows. So once again, we're going to enable circulation windows in the Checkout Center detail screen, and we're going to click on the Circulation Windows tab. So currently at my Checkout Center, I have circulation windows enabled to enforce the options that we saw earlier when we were creating reservations in WebCheckout and Patron Portal. So with my current setting, I'm allowing one pickup and 2 returns to be scheduled for each 30-minute interval that my Checkout Center is open. So to better manage the flow of pickups and returns, I simply added one setting that spans the entire week, Sunday at midnight through that next Sunday at midnight. I set the type option to pickups and returns, and defined one pickup and 2 returns per 30-minute window duration. Now let's start from scratch and add a new setting while also better defining each of these options. So to remove our setting, we're going to click on this remove icon. And we're going to start by adding our new settings by clicking on this green plus icon to add a brand new setting. So first, we're going to start by defining our start and our end time for the setting. So the start and end time will define when during the week a specific setting applies. So if your Checkout Center only requires one setting for the entire week, just like in my previous example, the Checkout Center can have one single setting with a start and end time set to these default times of Sunday at midnight. This is going to create one setting that spans the entire week. Operators only need to create different settings and adjust the start and end times if different settings should apply throughout the week or throughout the day. Now in our new example, we're going to have 2 settings to allow for pickups only on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and returns on Thursdays and Fridays. For our pickups on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, we're going to limit our pickups to one pickup every 30 minutes. And for returns on Thursdays and Fridays, we're going to allow one return every 10 minutes. So for our first setting, we're going to adjust our start and end time. So our first setting will begin on Monday at midnight and end on Thursday at midnight. So this first setting is for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Next, we're going to set the type of action that we're going to allow in between Monday at midnight through Thursday at midnight. So for this first setting, since we only want to allow pickups on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays, and since my reservations are larger, I only want to allow one pickup every 30 minutes. So I'm going to set my type to pickups, set my option to 1, and my window duration to 30 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and add our second setting now. And while we add our second setting, we're going to review our type option as well as our window duration in a bit more depth. So we'll add our plus icon. We'll click on our plus icon again to add our second setting. Now, as a reminder, we only want to allow returns on Thursdays and Fridays. So I'm going to have the second setting start on Thursday at midnight and have it end on Saturday at midnight. So now that we are adjusting our second setting, let's take a closer look at these type options right here. So we can enable settings to allow for pickups only, returns only, combine pickups and returns, and pickups and returns. So these first two options we have, pickups only and returns only, these are the settings that we're using right now to basically state that we're only going to allow pickups only or returns only throughout that start and end time. So when you use either of these settings, you're telling WebCheckout, I am only allowing pickups or returns within the start and end time. Now this combined option will allow both pickups and returns within the defined start and end time, and the included number that we include right here is going to define the total number of combined pickups and returns allowed within this window duration. So right now with combined, my checkout center would allow two pickups only, two returns only, or one pickup and return within any 30-minute window. Now the final option we have is pickups and returns. So this setting will allow for both pickups and returns within the defined start and end time. But with this option, the number of allowed pickups and returns within the window can be defined separately for both pickups and returns. So this is the only option where you're going to see two fields actually display. And in this first field, you can include a number to define the number of pickups allowed within the window duration. And within this second field, you can define the number of returns allowed within the window duration. Now with any of these options, if you do not include a number within this field right here, WebCheckout is going to allow an unlimited number of pickups or returns to be scheduled within the window duration. All right, now we're going to go ahead, now that we've set our type to returns, and we're going to allow one return within our window duration, we're going to actually define our window duration. So the window duration actually defines the drop-down options that you saw earlier in Patron Portal and in WebCheckout. So in my example, I want to allow one return every 10 minutes since my returns go a lot quicker than pickups. So I'm going to set my window duration to 10 minutes. All right, so now that we've adjusted our settings, we've added settings to allow for pickups only Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and returns only on Thursdays and Fridays. So now that we've adjusted both of our settings, the final step is to make sure that this setting at the top, use circulation windows, is enabled. Now, once this setting is enabled, circulation windows will override the simultaneous pickup returns, simultaneity period policies, the Patron Portal start granularity, and the Patron Portal reservation granularity policy. Now, please note, circulation windows does not override pickups forbidden on and returns forbidden on policies. Once circulation windows are enabled, we always recommend reviewing these settings both in WebCheckout and in Patron Portal to ensure that your settings are working the way that you have expected. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our settings in Patron Portal. So I'm going to log out and we will log back in. All right, now if we go ahead and go to create a new reservation, you can see that if I try to set my pickup time for Friday, we're going to be unable to because we only allow pickups. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And we can see that within our menu of pickup times, our pickup times start every 30 minutes, whereas end times have to be scheduled on Thursday and Friday. And within this drop-down menu, you're going to see available pickup times spaced out around every 10 minutes. And as a quick reminder, in WebCheckout, operators are going to see all windows with the number of currently scheduled pickups and returns, as well as the number that are allowed. So, right, you're going to have a little bit more freedom as an operator, whereas in Patron Portal, you're going to have to stick with the available windows. All right. So the second topic that we are going to review today is advanced imports. All right, so now we're going to review our new advanced import feature. Advanced imports is a powerful new tool to add and change data en masse and includes several new key features. So key features include the ability to import to a custom property, updates to unique identifiers such as resource IDs or person IDs en masse, the ability to exclude or protect fields so that they are not overwritten while updating other properties. That means that you can now include only the fields that you want to be updated on the import file and that those excluded will not be overridden. The ability to update currently reserved or checked out resources, and the ability to update origin en masse. And finally, there are improvements to the logging of changes made via import. Now, most of these changes are new features that were requested by you, our clients, so you likely may recognize some of these. So version 10 introduced our new advanced import feature, which was improved in version 11. And in version 12, you will find even more import features and a separate app for advanced imports. I highly recommend, if you have not yet, to start using the advanced import tool for changes to resources and types. While it does require a bit of a learning curve, it really is a big improvement. Version 12 will feature many improvements to advanced imports, so we are reviewing this feature today in preparation of version 12 being released later this year. Now, to help you with the transition to advanced imports, we have created documentation which reviews how to use these new files, individual file specifications, and we even have some step-by-step instructions to review a few different scenarios that you may want to use these advanced import files for. So today we're going to be doing a light review of how to properly use and format the advanced import file for a resource import, and we're going to demonstrate how to update resource ID en masse. So we're going to review how you can use the import files to update resource ID. If you are interested in a complete review and assistance with the advanced import files, please reach out to your account manager to discuss training options. So we're going to begin by exporting our advanced import files. So we're going to navigate back to WebCheckout, and since we're going to update resources, we're going to begin in the Find Resources screen. So we're going to click on Resources, Find Resources. And first, we're going to adjust our result columns and our search terms. So in my example, I only want to change a portion of my inventory's resource IDs. So I'm going to be using this type search term so that I can limit my results. So we're going to update one of my lenses. And if we click on the blue Find button, we can see that we have about 10 different resources within that type. So now we're going to export these results using the Export As option. Now, as you may have already noticed, that there are two export importable options. So there's export importable and deprecated export importable. So this deprecated export importable option is how you are going to export import file formats from version 9 and earlier. Please note that this format is called deprecated because eventually advanced imports will replace the existing import files. We recommend that your team begins to use the new advanced import files now to ensure that there's a seamless transition and adequate time for training. So we're going to click on Export As, Export Importable to export the new advanced import files. So now that I've exported our files, let's open up this file and review. So one moment, please, while I open up our file in Excel. All right, and you all now should be able to see an Excel file. It likely looks a little bit different than the resource file you all are used to if you haven't played around with the advanced import files now. Now let's go ahead and review this advanced import file, which we just exported from WebCheckout. So this advanced import file has 3 main sections. So first we have the comment section. Second, we have the configuration section. And then finally, we have the data section. And we'll be reviewing each of these sections in depth on the file today. So we're going to begin by reviewing the comment section at the top. And we're going to zoom in just a bit so you all can get a better view. Perfect. So the comment section includes information for the operator updating the files and is actually ignored at import. So formatting of the file does not occur in this section, and rather the purpose of this section is to provide you with the information that you need to update on the file, such as column headers and unique identifiers. So you can think of this as documentation provided to you directly in your exported import file. Now, since this section is ignored at import, you can also include notes to other operators that may be responsible for updating the file. So just for fun, let's add a note. So this is a note, update this file. Now, while you can always review our documentation to see many of the file requirements, only the exported files from your instance of WebCheckout will have information about your custom properties and the required column headers. So I have a custom right here for lens mount. This is only going to be available on my training instance. So if you want to be able to see headers for your custom properties, you will want to refer to the comment section of your file as well. So this comment section includes header names as they must appear on the import file, as well as the name of that field within WebCheckout. So there's 3 different subsections within the comment section. And the first subsection is the unique identifier properties. So this subsection includes information about the columns that can be used as a lookup column. And lookup column is actually a field that will update when we get down to the configuration portion. But for right now, you can note that this column is going to be used as the lookup column or the unique identifier that all of the other data will pivot off of. Now, the second subsection right here is other updatable properties. And this is probably the largest subsection we have in the comments. Now, the other updatable properties subsection is simply going to show you a list of all the available properties that you can include on this file. So these are all of the fields that you can import or update via import. And then the final subsection that we have is this required new row properties. So this is going to show you the columns which are required to create new resources on the resource import file. So these are required to create new resources but not to update existing resources. So these are the minimum requirements for creating brand new resources. Now, as a quick reminder, the main thing to note about the comment section is that this section will provide you and your team with useful information to properly format the file. Nothing needs to be updated by your team on this section. So this entire top section, it's just for informational purposes to help you properly format the configuration and data sections. Now let's update our configuration section. The configuration section begins after this begin config header and goes all the way down up until you see that begin data header. So this section is where we're going to determine our settings for the import. So this section is required, so it must remain on the import file, and you may need to make some adjustments to this section. So let's review each of these fields in the configuration section. All right, the first field that we have is version. So this option will automatically be set to 2 on your exported files and must remain set to 2. So if you're exporting this file, you can leave this field alone for now. The next field we have is the type field. So this is required and defines the type of data that is being imported. So since we're currently updating resources, our type is set to resource. Other options could include resource types, department, or person. So any other type of data you may be updating. Once again, if you exported this data, you can leave this row alone since it is automatically set. The next field we have is origin. So origin is required and defines the origin that data is being imported to. Now, please note, origin is case sensitive. So when you are updating existing data, the origin included here must match the origin of your data in WebCheckout. Now, when this file is exported, the field will automatically be set to external, like you see right here. So that's going to be set to external by default. Now, you may need to edit this row depending on the origin of your data in WebCheckout. So if all of your data is local or some sort of a custom origin, you may need to edit this field. And just to show you all, we do have origin included in this file, and we can see that all of our resources are set to the external origin. Next, we have label. So label is a text field to include information about the import. You can see that this field notes that the file was exported and the date and time of that export. So this field is not required and can be omitted, but we're going to actually relabel our file, and we'll just note that we did this during Town Hall, November 2020. All right, next we have our lookup columns. So the lookup column, this field is required and must include one of the unique identifiers noted in the comment section as a unique ID property. So just to refresh everyone's memory, this lookup column field right here must include one of these unique IDs within the unique ID properties listed right here in your comment section. So we can include either label ID or barcode. All right. Now, when we adjust the lookup columns, this is going to define the primary key that all of the other data being updated or created pivots off of. So the lookup column must remain consistent, whereas other columns can be updated. So in our example, since we want to update resource ID, we're going to change this label ID lookup column to barcode instead. So we're going to go ahead and grab the correct header so that we can swap it from label ID to barcode. Now, as a reminder, right, I can tell which fields I can choose just by looking at the top under these unique ID properties. All right, so now that I've updated my file, barcode will remain unchanged and consistent while all other fields included in the next row, import columns, may be updated. Now, as a quick note, to use the barcode header, as the lookup column, data does need to be included in that column before we use. So you can always use some sort of temporary data, such as an old resource ID or temporary barcode to satisfy this. And you can always remove that data later. So if we take a look at our exported data, we can see that we've already used barcode. All of my resources have barcodes. So that's why I can use this as the lookup column, because there's a different unique identifier that we can use. All right, next we're going to review and adjust our import columns. So import columns, this field is also required and defines the fields that may be updated on the import file. So since in our example, we're going to be updating resource ID, we're going to include that applicable header label ID as an import column. So I'm literally going to grab that correct header from my comment section, and I'm going to insert it as an import column. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead and adjust our non-import columns. So non-import columns, so this field is required only if columns included in the data section below are not included as lookup or import columns. So within this field right here, this is where you're going to define the columns that are included on the file, but you want to be excluded from this update. So essentially, I want to protect these fields. Additionally, it is important to note that columns not included on this file will not be updated. So if we just had a much smaller export, right, those columns of information not included would not be updated. Now, mass updates of data are now very intentional with the advanced import file, since we've minimized the room for error by being able to note which columns we're importing to and which we're not importing to. Now, in my example, even though I have all of these extra columns, which you can see on the import file, I don't want to import to them. I want to minimize my room for error. So I'm going to move all of the other columns into this non-import field right here. So I'm literally just going to copy all of my column headers and paste them in as a non-import column and remove them as import columns. And also I'm going to remove barcode as a non-import column since we're using it as our lookup column right here. All right, now being able to set and adjust our lookup column, import columns, and non-import columns is a huge improvement and will give you a lot more flexibility to be able to update your data and leave a lot less room for error. So for those of you who are familiar with the old deprecated import file, there really was no way to exclude columns from being updated during an import, which meant that you had to be very careful to not accidentally update or delete data in those columns. So having these three settings here is really a huge improvement, and I do recommend using and playing around with these on the new advanced import file. Now, the final row that we have right here is actions. So actions in version 11 is not required and is not currently available in version 11, but actions will be available in version 12. So you can omit this column for right now, and nothing needs to be included within this column. So now we're going to review our final section of the file, and that is our data section. So the data section begins under the begin data header, and it's going to continue all the way until the end of the file. So the data section is required and must include all of the columns referenced as a lookup column and an import column. This section of the file is where you're going to include all of your actual data, and you will probably find this section to be the most similar to the old deprecated import file. So you're going to see a lot of similarities with the way you'll need to format these columns. All right, first we're going to review our headers to ensure that they're all accounted for on the file. So we can see that my lookup column of barcode, this is already included, and I've included valid barcodes, and my label ID column has already been included. So next, we're going to update our data. Now remember, if we look at our import columns, we've only included label ID as an import column, and everything else is included as a non-import column. So just for fun, we're going to change some of our data. So I'm actually going to change my checkout center right here to my faux checkout center, since this column is ignored at import. So now we're actually going to update our resource ID. So remember, the point of this import was to show you all how to en masse update these resource IDs. So now that we've adjusted our lookup column and we're using barcode, we can adjust our resource ID here and make those changes en masse. So I'm going to go ahead and just add the word town hall into our resource IDs. So I've just added in the word town hall before the numbers. And now all of my new resource IDs after I import are going to include the word town hall in it. So now that the data section and all other sections have been updated, we'll need to save our file and import. So please note, files still must be saved as a CSV with UTF-8 encoding. So I'm going to go ahead and save my file. And now we're going to navigate back to WebCheckout. All right, so now you should all see the WebCheckout screen. Now let's go ahead and import our data. So we're going to start by backing up the database. So this is a very important step that is often overlooked, and we always highly recommend backing up the database with each and every time that you import data. So we're going to go to Admin, Global Settings, and we're going to click this Backup Database button. Now, for those of you who are following along, this may take several minutes on your instance. So now we're going to navigate to the Import Data screen found under Admin, Import Data. Now to import the advanced import files, we're going to use the dedicated advanced import tab right here. So we no longer need to click on individual tabs to define the type of data we're importing. And we'll start by choosing our file. And we're going to click on Load Files. Now, you may notice that there are errors present in this step. And as we click on the buttons to complete our import, so next we'll click Validate, and finally we will click Promote, you may see different errors be presented at each of these steps. Now, it is very important to check for errors on each and every one of these steps, so you always want to click to view your errors, because if there are any errors, this could potentially affect the file's ability to import. So finally, I'm going to click on this Promote button to finalize that import. So now let's go ahead and review our data on the Find Resource screen. So I'm going to go back to Resources, Find Resources, and now we can see that my new resource ID has been updated, and you can see that that word Town Hall has been inserted into that resource ID. Now, we always recommend reviewing data after you finalize the import just to ensure that everything looks as expected, and we can see our updated resource IDs are here. Now, since these resources do circulate, we can also view changes on the timeline scheduler as well. So if I navigate back to the timeline scheduler, I can view my lenses. And we can see our updated resource IDs here. So if you decide to re-import, especially on a resource type file, to move around and readjust your types, you may want to review on the timeline scheduler. Now, before we wrap up, one final thing I do want to show you is the improved logging of changes made via import. So this can be found under Admin, system events. And I'm going to sort by time so that we can see the most recent events on my instance. Now, as you can see, the changes I made via import were logged, and I can see that the resource ID was changed, and I can actually see that I was the operator that performed that change. Additionally, a couple other improvements that I do want to note before we wrap up is that when we do import using the advanced import file, we only have one tab we need to use now. We don't have to click on a specific tab. And then finally, when you're updating resources only, you no longer need to import that type file as well. Only one file is going to be required, as long as there are valid types that go along with those resources. Now, advanced imports are a really powerful tool, and it should hopefully streamline the import process. For one-on-one training, please reach out to inquire about our training offerings. Now, we want to wrap up our session with a quick review on some of the major features that we've released this year. So we're going to begin with a few key features in version 9.0, which was released back in April. So in version 9, we released the rapid allocation feature, which allows operators to create checkouts and reservations quickly on a single screen. We also improved rapid return, adding an auto submit feature to automatically return resources when scanned, and an option to return unserialized resources on the rapid return screen. We also added an option to bulk cancel upcoming reservations on the Find Reservations to Cancel screen. We improved the Checkout Center calendar user interface and made it more intuitive. We also improved the rapid return and preventative maintenance module and added an option to automatically schedule maintenance on checkout return. In version 10, we released provisional returns to mark checkouts as received to quarantine equipment. Also in version 10, we released advanced imports, which we discussed here today. And then finally, in version 11, we released circulation windows, which we also discussed here today, so that you could better control the return options as well as the number of pickups and returns allowed. Now, reviewing many of these features, you may recognize these as features you either requested or included input on during one of our town halls. All of the features on this slide, as well as many, many more, were added to WebCheckout based on customer feedback. So our customers' feedback is very important, and we always want to welcome your feedback as well as your feature requests. Now this brings us to our discussion portion of our town hall today. So now we'll be passing the discussion over to you, our customers. So during this section, we want to give you all the floor to share your successes with the fall 2020 semester, as well as discuss some changes you want to implement for the spring 2021 semester. So are there any questions, concerns, or unique problems you're trying to solve in the spring semester? And we're also going to check the chat to see if there's any questions for the discussion portion. All right, I'm checking our discussion section right now. So it looks like we have a question. A couple questions about circulation windows and also regarding some feature requests. Let's go ahead and review those questions, but you all can feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you if you want to join the discussion.
Brittany, I'll read off the questions for you so it's easier.
That would be helpful.
Sure. So Greg asks, for circulation windows, for pickups and returns, is it possible to include resource count as a modifier? If we have a pickup return for a few items, it would be a single event. If we had large pickup returns, it could count as 2 for circulation windows? So basically, can resource count be a factor for the number of circulation events within your window?
That is a great question. Unfortunately, when we're setting up our circulation windows, the only type of events that we can currently account for are pickups and returns. So it's per allocation basis, but that's a great feature request.
Yes, and Greg, that has been a feature request. It's either the count or even the value. But for this feature for circulation windows, this was a quick turnaround. So most of our customers who requested it, they wanted it available for the fall semester. So it was just the number of pickups and returns within the time frame. But we can definitely add, and I think this is Greg from Toyota. We can add you to the list of requesters for this feature to include resource count as a possible modifier consideration for how many pickups and returns could be scheduled. All right, continuing on, Tim asks, can you have overlapping circulation windows, X number of pickups on Monday through Wednesday with Y numbers of returns on Monday and Wednesdays?
Yeah.
So, yep.
For that, it sounds like you would want to set up separate settings. So one setting for Monday, Tuesday. So one setting for Monday, one setting for Tuesday, one for Wednesday, etc., so that you can define the total number of pickups and returns you want to allow each day of the week. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So rather than having schedules span over multiple days, we would want to set one setting. Let's say our first setting begins at 8:00 a.m. on Monday and goes until 8 p.m. on Monday. And with our first setting, we could say on Mondays, we're going to allow one pickup every 30 minutes, but we're going to allow for 3 returns. The same idea applies for Tuesday. We'll set our settings for Tuesday at 8 a.m. to Tuesday, 8:00 p.m. Maybe on Tuesdays, we only allow pickups only, and we're going to allow just one pickup every 30 minutes. Does that help to answer your question, Tim?
So I think more what we were trying to do is, a pickup is a more involved event. So say on a Monday to allow, 2 checkouts or pickups within an hour, but during that same hour also allow 4 returns, but be able to actually specify that, because combined, oh wait, never mind. I realize that doing the pickup returns. Yep. It's right
You
there.
got it.
Yep. Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Perfect.
All right, thanks, Brittany. I'll continue on. And Abele is a feature request. So we would like the descriptions documenting the initial reason why this circulation window setting was created. And I believe we got some clarification. And Abele, just to make sure we're on the same page, are you looking to have this information to your operators or the patrons, either in WebCheckout or in Patron Portal, to let them know why you have these circulation times now?
Yeah, we would like to have our operators to be on board on the latest changes of circulation windows, and the descriptions would be the best way to let them know. For
So
the specific checkout centers, since we have multiple checkout centers, some may differ with the circulation window settings versus the other ones. So in case it is different, we'd like to specify the reasons why it's different from a certain checkout center.
yeah, so in terms of notes for your operators, you could definitely use the login message of the day. So right when they log in, when they enter in their username and password to log into WebCheckout. I don't believe you guys have single sign-on, so you have the WebCheckout login screen. You can include your reasonings there so everyone can see. And that login screen is visible to all operators, regardless of what checkout centers they have access to. Otherwise, it would be a training issue and working with your team to let them know. But the login message of the day might work for your need.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, continuing on, Micah asks, when is version 12 expected to be available?
So version 12 is expected to come out before the end of the year.
Yeah, actually before the end of November. So we have a date in mind, and we're targeted towards this date, but definitely our goal is before the end of November. And Brittany's been reviewing version 11, so all that you see now with circulation windows and advanced imports is available now. Okay, Brittany, continuing on with the question, Asa asks, will the system event screen also show additions and deletions of users, groups, and group membership by automated processes?
You know, that's a good question. I haven't tested that one out myself yet, but we'd be happy to follow up with that information.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up. So that's with the integration. Does it log inactivating users? And we'll have to get back to you on that, Aaron, or Asa, excuse me. Noted that. Micah asks, will there be a checkbox for mark as return available on the quick return window similar to auto submit?
Got it. So it sounds like you're referring to the rapid return, Micah. So at this time, there's not the ability to mark resources or to mark an allocation as returned within the rapid return. That does need to be done within the allocation detail screen. And you'll find that as an action button, since it doesn't require you scan barcodes to actually mark the checkout as returned. Does that make sense what I'm saying, Micah? So just to show you, let me go ahead and pick up this checkout or pick up this reservation. When I go to mark the checkout as received, I don't need to return items individually or mark individual items as returned. Rather, I'm just marking that whole allocation as received. It sounds like you may want to mark individual items as received though.
When you do, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, sorry. When you do that, does it take it out of the general queue under, if you go under allocations, find checkouts, does it take it out of that listing?
Yeah, so you'll still see it under incoming, and you can include a received time here. So you can note that it's been received, but it hasn't fully been returned. So you'll still see it in the queue, so you can know when you need to return it. And it'll also still be visible under the find checkouts queue. And additionally, you can also, I made a custom screen right here, custom search right here for received allocations. And you can use a search term called received but not returned to look at specifically all of your checkouts that have been received, but you haven't yet returned. Does that make sense, Kathy?
Okay. But there's no way to flag, like if you go under all checkouts, there's nothing on that screen that just flags it. You have to go in specifically under received.
So under allocations, find checkouts, you would want to add that search term called received but not returned. So you can customize.
Okay, so that's something I have to create on my end.
You got it. So you would add this field right here, received but not returned, and that's going to specifically filter out to only show those received checkouts. And I believe there's also a result column for received time as well, if you prefer that, be added as a column, which we already have right here.
But I have to create a customized field before I can do that. Is that what you're saying?
So the field's already there. You would just want to add it to your find screen.
Oh, okay. It's already created by WebCheckout.
You got it.
I'm sorry.
It's already there. It's ready for you to use. You just need to add it to the
I
find
understand.
screen.
Mhm.
That's great to hear.
Hi, it's Micah Brenner. If I can just ask a question regarding. Sorry.
Sure.
Busy.
If I can just ask a quick question. So in regards to the markers returned,
Mhm.
I'm wondering, is it possible to partially do a marcus returned if there's missing items and not check in everything?
So are you saying that marked as received option rather than returned? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we've had students who, for instance, if they have 5 items, and they forgot a battery pack or something, we simply have to click the mark as returned, even though there's a missing item.
Yeah, so you're marking it as received, not marking it as returned.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so WebCheckout hasn't actually returned those items.
Right.
And if you, right, you can always return specific items. So let's say that this checkout only has 1 item, but let's say we had 5 items. We could mark this item as received. And then in a few days, once it's safe to actually put our hands on that equipment, if we notice there's some items missing, we would just want to return those items that have actually been returned. And WebCheckout will then keep those items still checked out that have not been returned. And you can always mark your checkout as not returned if you find that there's not enough items to accept it back. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Great.
Mike, just an option you can always add. So the mark is received, that is all allocation. It's not individual items, but you could always use the activity tab to include a note. Or also you could use custom properties and go to the other info tab, add a custom property if you'd like, and list down the resources. So it's not the most streamlined, but you can always note that what's missed, and adding a note to the other info that we do have a little icon, that little exclamation point. So you can always look to that, but like Brittany mentioned, you would just not return it when it is.
I think one of our concerns was that by marking it as the terminology, the marking as received, if we mark it as received, even though, for instance, that battery pack has not been returned, is it freezing late fees then while it's in quarantine for those, for instance, like 4 or 5 days?
So it's temporarily freezing those, but once you return those other items and that battery pack, let's say, isn't returned and it's no longer marked as received, those fees would still accrue for those items that are still checked out. Does that make sense?
Okay, that does, yeah. Thank you.
You are welcome.
All right, so continuing on, and we're now shifting gears to advanced import. Thank you, Brittany, for that review. Utai asks, while the advanced import does work well, but it's also very powerful, as Brittany stated, in a large org where there are many importers, would it be possible in the config setting to set a checkout center modification location so only update the resources for a checkout center org? Utai asked a question, if someone fat fingered and accidentally entered in a resource ID that does not belong to their checkout center, but was trying to update it, was not trying to update that resource that didn't belong to their checkout center, but it unintentionally did. There's no way around it, right, Brittany? Holly and I were talking about it offline, and we'll have to test to follow up with everyone. But let's say you have a resource called MacBook Pro 1. I also have a checkout center, and I use MacBook Pro A, but instead I actually accidentally wrote in MacBook Pro 1, and I wanted to update the serial number. I would be updating your resource, right? Because I didn't include the checkout center name.
Correct. If you were to match on that exact resource ID, that potential could be there, but there's still a lot less room for error on the advanced import file.
Right. Very true. But Utai, we do understand your feedback, and we can definitely work that out with our development team. The advanced import feature, I think Brittany mentioned this, that it's still being developed. While most of the features are available now in the release of version 12, you'll get to see additional features in advanced import. So this is something we can bring up to add. And I would also like to note, I misspoke about the release of version 12. Brittany was right. It will be out before the end of the year, not end of November. It'll be ready for us, but for us to release it, it'll be before the end of the year. Sorry about that. Brittany, you were right.
Woohoo!
I'll continue on with the questions. This is from Paul Brown. Is there a way to pull a report on circulation windows, say for the security department for campus access? ID numbers, names, times, dates. I know you can pull allocation reports, but I wanted to exclude info related to checkouts that are for on-campus use. I wanted to exclude info related to checkouts that are for on-campus use. Does the
Yeah, so I wanted to pull a report we send to security for, okay, here's everyone that's in the circulation windows, but we do have some checkouts that occur for, maybe just on campus, and I didn't want to get those mixed up in that data, if that makes sense.
So you're looking for specific allocations that start, it sounds like, at a specific start and end time. Would that be correct, Paul?
Possibly, but just everything that falls under the circulation window.
Got it. I think the best option to find those specific allocations is going to be that using the pickup, earliest scheduled and latest scheduled, and the return, earliest scheduled and latest scheduled. Those are going to allow you to define specific start and end times that you're looking for allocations within. So if you're looking for a 10 a.m. pickup window, you could add the pickup earliest scheduled for 10 o'clock a.m. So if we're looking for tomorrow, Friday the 13th at 10 o'clock a.m., we could add pickup earliest scheduled 10 o'clock a.m. and that will show us any allocations starting. And we could also add pickup latest scheduled. So if you allowed 20 pickups exactly at 10 o'clock a.m., you would include that exact time since it would be on a specific window. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm thinking about it the incorrect way. Is circulation windows are global to the checkout center. So what we might have to do is do pickup type and set maybe, window versus driveway, and then we have more metadata to refine by.
Got it. So when you're talking about pickup windows, are you referring to circulation windows?
Sorry, circulation windows, yeah.
Got it. And you're trying to find allocations that are in a specific duration, so a specific window. So like when I'm looking at my windows in the patron portal, I would be looking at, say, my 10:30 a.m. pickup window. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, that makes sense. So if I wanted to see everything that was scheduled to be picked up then at my 10:30 a.m. window, I would want to use my find screen. So allocations, I would use find upcoming to view upcoming reservations. And then using our search terms, we're going to add that start earliest scheduled and start latest scheduled. So those are going to limit your results so that you're only seeing allocations within that specific window. Does that make sense? start earliest scheduled and start latest scheduled, this is going to only show you pickups within these specific times. So if I chose 10 o'clock a.m., and let's say we wanted to see everything from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. So we wanted to include several windows. So we would view all of our pickups, everything that was scheduled to be picked up between 10 a.m. and 1 o'clock p.m. tomorrow, Friday the 13th. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think what we'd need to do is just add additional information to the allocation, like in terms of how it's being picked up, and then we could refine our report. But that's perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Got it. So it sounds like you want to add a custom property to your allocations.
Yeah, Brittany, I think that could help Paul. And actually, Aaron from Seneca just chimed in the chat. If you want to find on-site versus off-site, why not create a custom field?
Yeah.
And define that per allocation.
Yeah, so this is an example of one that we have right here where we have our pickup option set to drive up versus in person. And you can always use that on your find screens too.
Thank you.
And then this is more of a feature request from Reagan, and he echoes Micah's request. Just being able to mark individual items as received would be nifty. We'll make note of that. Katie Martin comments, I like the idea of leaving comments in the activity tab to note issues with an order. However, could we add an option to highlight certain comments, maybe color coding? There could be a lot of activity in an order, so I worry that comments might be missed. So that's a feature request. So it's not to highlight certain comments. Okay. And then Cecile Ann asks, will email reminder templates be available that are triggered by circulation windows expiring in relation to reservation, pickup, and checkout return times?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the emails that are going to be sent based off the allocation start and end time, right? So patrons or users are going to receive those same emails that either are sent out before the scheduled start time, such as the pickup reminder to let them know that they have an upcoming pickup, whether it's scheduled for 10 a.m. or 10:15, to let them know that they need to come pick it up. So the same emails are going to apply regardless of if you're using circulation windows or not.
And Brittany, just to confirm with you, the grace period that will apply to the pickup windows too, right? So I have a 10-minute pickup grace period. That policy was posted in my email. Saying,
yeah, that pickup grace period is still going to be in force.
Okay, great. And then Lewis asks, can we use advanced import to mass change patron classes?
Yeah, you could definitely use that. You can use the current import files to use that as well. But yeah, you can definitely make changes to patron classes, but remember it is within the limits of the names of your current patron classes within WebCheckout. So most clients typically have those default patron class names of undergraduate, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Changes to the actual name options do need to still be made by our technical support team. But you can update patron classes on the import file.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
And then Paul asks, can operators with correct permissions override circulation windows?
Yes, operators within WebCheckout will definitely be able to override circulation windows. So if we go back into our new reservation screen, just to show you, and I think these were scheduled on Mondays. right? You can override and schedule more than the limit allows. And you can also click on the calendar icon to revert back to that standard time selector. So if you want to schedule outside of the window, so if you don't want to schedule on those every 30-minute intervals, you could schedule a different time by just clicking on the calendar icon.
Thanks, Brittany. Was that a new operator override capability, or was it tacked onto one that already exists? I'm really testing you today.
I believe there is no additional operator capability. Let me go ahead and verify that, though.
I see
You're
Holly
right, Brittany.
unmuted. Yeah. Okay, Holly.
It's in the simultaneity period override.
Got it. So you'll need the simultaneity period override, and that will work. That will also override the circulation windows. Thanks, Holly. Okay, and question from Migdio. Just wanted to ask about new developments regarding the dashboard and perhaps reports. So while that's not on our roadmap for this year, we have version 12 coming out, but it is in discussion for our 2021 releases, dashboards and reports. So to what extent they will be, it's still unknown, but it's with improving our dashboard and reporting functionality is something that we are working towards or continuing to work on. And Brittany, I think that's it for the questions. Does anyone else have any questions about circulation windows or advanced imports before we move on to discussion?
Actually, had just to clarify one thing. It is a global setting per checkout center, right?
So it's a checkout center setting. So each checkout center can have their own circulation window settings enabled. Does that make sense?
Cool. Thank you.
Great.
All right, Nick from Chapman University. Hey, Nick, he just commented that he's been using circulation windows for several weeks now, and our students definitely like them. Hooray.
That's great to hear. Any other questions?
I think we're good, Brittany.
Does anyone have anything they would like to discuss about the fall 2020 semester, the upcoming spring 2021 semester?
Is everybody still coming back to campus? Students, as far as, people that have students on campus, will they be returning in January?
I can speak for Pasadena, LA County. It's looking increasingly unlikely that we're going to be approved by the county/city to resume classes on campus. It's correlated to the positivity rate and the case count per 100,000, and it's just not going in the right direction right now. We are trying to get access for a limited number of students to be able to do some work, but it doesn't involve classes.
It's the same for us down in Orange County. We all think that after Thanksgiving, we're probably going to end up closing classes, but since since the industry is still doing production in LA, we're hoping that our students can continue doing production, but in class, we'll see.
I'm in Pennsylvania, so on the other side of the country, we have about 30% of our classes were on campus this semester, mostly sciences and arts. Mass communications was not. I don't know why, but they all went home. And the plan is to do the same in the spring. So we actually have a 2-month winter break. We leave next Tuesday, right before Thanksgiving, and don't come back until February 1st. So we have a lot of time through the winter. And again, only about 30 to 40% of the students will be on campus.
Hey everyone, this is McDeal. How are you? For the City University of New York, in particular Lehman College, we're going to continue to do what we have done this semester, which is 98% of the courses online, while 2% of the courses are hybrid with extreme restrictions. So the campus is not allowing anyone on the grounds unless they have filled out their contact tracing app, and unless they have received prior notification of these individuals attending campus for whatever reason, including for teaching. So there are a number of restrictions that, as far as I know, will continue for the spring semester, well, for the winter and spring semester, and unless things turn into a 180-degree rapid turn, it appears that the entire semester is forecast to be pretty much the way it is right now, 98% online and 2%, maybe a little bit higher, I can say exactly, but that's what we are forecasting for the spring semester of 2021.
And it looks like we have 2 notes in the chat. So Cecile Ann from Northwestern has said that Northwestern has opened up partially this fall, and they've maintained less than a 1% positivity rate. So they're on track to open up more in January. And then it looks like Tina from Fanshawe in London, Ontario, they have a mix of 100% online and blended programs. So they're going to be continuing with this plan for the winter term. Does anyone else have any changes coming for the winter or spring term?
One thing that was a challenge ending the summer term and going into fall, and will be a challenge again, is we've got somewhere in the realm of like 105 laptops deployed, and we have to get them all back for re-imaging, unfortunately. And simply, you know, we had a lot of people that lagged in their returns. That's nothing new. It just got exacerbated in some ways because of the number of people. Some of them were remote. Just getting people to respond to emails, whether and there was some faculty in that mix too. So I'm sure that's a challenge everyone else has. But any thoughts or insight? We obviously call people, send emails, etc. But some people just want to ignore us until we turn the heat up.
How are students returning those? Are they mailing them or are they returning them in person?
Yeah, we got a mix. Some, if students are local, they can bring it back and do a drop off, but otherwise we will send them a FedEx return label. One of the things I'm trying to ponder is how long is this going to continue, because laptop shipping boxes that we've gotten from Uline, you know, they don't last forever. And I'm trying to think of something more durable to ship to protect the laptops, maybe like the Pelican hardback cases, whether that's worth the investment or not. So any insight on that would be good.
Some of the cases that we've used I'm at University of Waterloo. There's a company called Monoprice, and we've had.
I know them very well. They're just down the road from us.
yeah, we've had great success with their cases. And in regards to the cost difference between them and the branded Pelican, it's pretty significant.
Does anyone else have any shipping tips or tips to help Art Center get their laptops back? Has anyone had any success with this over the fall semester, getting students to ship items back or to bring them back when they're on a when they aren't on campus as regularly.
Nick from Chapman just comments that we had several people just ignore returns, even when we offered to pay shipping.
I love free returns. Why did you do that?
Mignio comments, people continue to ship laptops when requested with the return label attached. They also have the option to drop off if it's convenient for them.
One of the things that, like, we've got an agreement with FedEx where we get a very substantial discount on express services, but what still dings us is the insurance cost. And the question I sort of had was, is there a lower insurance way to do that? I know there's third-party programs, and I've sort of brought it up. It hasn't really gotten a lot of traction, but I'm curious if anyone's doing a lot of shipping and using a third-party insurer that lowers their costs.
Well, so for us as a state institution, we're quote unquote self-insured. So basically, if something gets lost or destroyed, we just buy a new one. That's all there is to it.
Here with anything that we ship out, especially laptops, we're the exact same thing. If they get damaged or lost or not returned, we just buy another one or bite the bullet at that point. We've been fine the whole summer whenever I deployed a laptop and had them returned at the beginning of this semester. I think we only had one issue where the student hasn't contacted us back, and we're trying to contact them now since the whole summer pretty much, but we're just putting a hold on their account that in the college itself, but that's it.
Yeah, and that's what I've had to do too. There was a student that had something late since June and finally brought it back last week because he wasn't able to schedule for the spring semester because I had a hold on his account. So that finally convinced him to bring back, I think it was just a little handy cam too, but holding students' grades and other student information system access is helpful.
It is, but sadly ours is a issue of that the student graduated and had a summer class and was still using it and was supposed to return in August and never did. And we're trying to figure that out now. But that's the only issue I've had with deploying laptops or equipment.
My hold also stops them from getting their diplomas or transcripts. So if they graduate, they're not actually graduating until they bring my stuff back.
Yeah, pretty much.
We've got really one very complex one where a student over the summer gave the laptop he had to another student who then went to South Korea, and trying to get that back via international shipment is a complex process for a number of reasons. So
we also ran into in August we shipped out about 120 cameras essentially worldwide. A lot of our students are international, so we ran into, like, domestic was about, again, significant discounts for bulk shipping like that through UPS and FedEx. So it was about $5 per package, and then we are just receiving the bills now for the international packages, and they're running, like, to India, for instance, is about $850 for a camera. Just yeah, wow. To do they charge you 40% duties on top of the shipping and content value.
yeah, the actual, like, we've estimated like a laptop coming back from South Korea, I think it was like 130, 150, but then we had a student that was requesting like a Cintiq. I forget what country it was, but yeah, the duties were going to end up being several $100s.
Yeah.
One way.
Yeah.
At that point, is it easier just to find a retailer that's already in that country?
I think that's what the department ended up doing, is finding a local place to rent something or something like that. I think it was Brazil, actually, we were trying to go in and out of. Yeah.
Not so much international costs, but like, how do you guys deal with, let's just say, camera equipment and such? Like, each student has a different type of amount, like one camera or Zoom or whatever their order is. And let's just say sending it, it's easy. Returning it, would you have them send it whatever shipping they can do and then we just get the bill from them, and then we just reimburse them, or how would you go about doing that for returns?
So what we did when we shipped out, we had a prepaid way bill inside the box. So essentially, when they're finished with it and we set the date for them to send it back, it's charged to our shipping account. So just a matter of they slap it on the box, they call, whether it's Purelator or FedEx or UPS, and then it's just automatically shipped back. And again, we're charged those same fees that were outgoing. We get charged those again.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, we've covered the domestic shipping costs when they're needed. We have enacted a policy where nothing can leave the United States without written approval because of the exact reasons I talked about. In those cases where someone did it unauthorized, we're going to charge them back for that. But to answer your other question, I've kind of not been going in the direction of letting the students pick their return carriers for the international, because at least if we're organizing it, we know it's insured, we know it's tracked, and we can keep an eye on the progress of it versus them doing it themselves. A lot more unknowns.
Actually, can I jump in with a non-shipping question real quick? Wanted to know, so we have the kind of marked as received function in WebCheckout, but we also have a 3-day quarantine requirement for our equipment, but the turnaround time doesn't kick in until the items have actually been returned, like scanned into to return. How are people dealing with that kind of function? So we have, obviously the point of the quarantine is we don't want our student employees to be handling equipment that just came back. So we'll mark it as received. It'll kind of sit there for 3 days, but then when we return it, it triggers the turnaround time for an additional 3 days. Is there a better workflow for that, or does anybody use these settings?
I thought turnaround time could not be overridden on reservations, but it could be on checkouts. Is that correct, Brittany?
Yeah, so you can override or you can delete the turnaround time. What it sounds like, if you're using marked checkout as received and you're using that as kind of your quarantine period, it may make sense that you use the turnaround time less for quarantine time and more for that additional time, just in case items show up late. Does that make sense? So,
yes. So in which case we would enable the, like we could in theory delete turnaround time on return, or just use it as a separate thing. Okay.
So you'd probably want to adjust your turnaround time, right? Just to ensure you have enough time for the items that show up late, depending on how long it takes students to return equipment. So go back to more of a normal turnaround time. And then if you enable delete turnaround time schedules on return, once you've returned those resources, that turnaround time is going to be deleted. So it won't impede the next checkout. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's also, Nick, that might answer your question or solve your problem, but there's also under the resources menu, Brittany, if you don't mind showing Nick, he might already be familiar with the report find turnaround time schedules. So it's definitely the delete on return is automatic, but you can always search for like specific resources or resource types that do have a turnaround time. And then from here, looks like Brittany doesn't have any. You can select individual. You can select individual resources, or you can multi-select, select all, or multiple select, select multiple, and delete the turnaround time schedules for specific resources.
Okay, I think the original reason we started using the turnaround time setting, it's starting to come back to me in my memory, is in order to prevent any other checkouts from happening during the quarantine period.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we use it too.
Right. So when no, never mind. That still works. I'm crazy. Never mind.
All right. Looking at the chat. Hey, Louis, I'm not sure if you're unable to unmute, but would you be able to clarify your feature request in the chat? So,
Yeah.
okay.
Hi. So right now, well, we function, and we've always functioned on we don't have semesters. We function, 365 days out of the year. We currently have our setting for the advanced limit via the portal to 30 days. And the idea behind that is, because we want to give the most amount of patrons potential access to use our resources. Now, one of the issues that we're running into now is that we have certain patrons that, because there's a 30-day advance limit, they try to reserve, like, let's call it every Thursday for the next 30 days. Because the only settings that are limited, that are available to limit, are max allocations on a per day, per week, and a per semester basis. So then what ends up happening is that, a patron puts in every Thursday from the beginning of the month or over 30-day course, and then we have to continually disapprove them. And on their end, it is available, so then they are waiting on the pending approval, but then we run into sorry, we had to decline it. And it's just, you take that scenario and you multiply it by however many producers are trying to book every, Thursday available up to 30 days.
Yes.
So, because like we don't have a problem if we were set it to a maximum allocations per week, like, okay, we can, that producer can, or the patron can use it once a week, sure, but that doesn't carry over to the next week.
Got it. So I have a question. Would it be helpful if patrons in the portal couldn't schedule those repeat allocations so that they're only scheduling one allocation at a time? Would that be helpful?
Well, they do that now. They just spam us with reservations.
Got it.
Like I've literally, like an hour ago, I've just been dealing with another patron who just continuously spammed us with like 10 reservation requests all in the month of November.
So they're not making repeats. They're
No.
making individual allocations. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're trying to limit them within.
And then ideally a 4-week period, because it could be mid-November, and they, if their limit, let's say if it was a maximum of once a week or 4 times a month, they would only they could effectively, if it's November 12th, they could book the next 6 weeks. Like 2 weeks in November and then all of December if they wanted to.
And are they typically reserving the same items over and over again, or is
Yeah,
it different items?
we offer like the professional Zoom accounts, and then we're actually going to be using another platform, StreamYard, to create productions so that our producers don't have to pay for them. So it is like the same resource. It's like studio time.
Got it. So something that I was thinking of just kind of out of the box is, I know we have these patron usage limit per day, week, and per term. You can go ahead and actually, if you wanted to, you could use this term option, and you can define your term on a monthly basis. And this is actually set under admin organization under the calendar tab. And from here, we can go ahead and we can add in our terms. So you could have one term per month. So one for November, one for December, and you could limit that reservation usage within the month that way. That would be.
If we set a term from, let's say, January 1 to the 31st, and let's say if it was January 26th, wouldn't February then be unavailable because it's out of term?
No, it would still be available because you can set multiple terms back to back now in the newer versions of WebCheckout. So it would still be available as long as it would fall within your hours of operation. So if your checkout center was open and it was within that availability period.
So do we just run the terms to the last day of the month, and then I'm assuming it starts at midnight?
Yeah,
Or we
so
would just run it to midnight.
yeah, let's go ahead and add, right, a November term, and I'm going to adjust this to begin November 1st at midnight and end December 1st at midnight. And then same idea, I'm going to change this to our December term. Oh, wrong way, Brittany. Let's just type in those. So I'm going to begin this at midnight on December 1st and end this and January 1st, 2021. And now since I have one term for December, one term for November, when I set up these per term policies, so the patron usage limit per term and the patron reserve limit per term, this is going to look at those terms that you have set to define the reserved limits as well as the usage limit. Does that
So
make sense?
it would just look at the month as a whole. So if somebody started booking, let's say mid-November, they could, in theory, still do 6 in a row.
If it was within the usage limit, correct. You could.
Yeah. Okay.
Lewis, is one of your objectives to ensure equitable distribution of equipment to everyone?
Yeah, pretty much.
We've had this challenge in our photography department, and what we're doing currently is students can do a 3-day checkout. It doesn't count days we're not open, obviously. Then they can ask for an extension like the day before that's due. In theory, what this allows is as they have checkouts in the future, people can book reservations. So if we go to do an extension, go, nope, can't do it, or it's only partial, then they have to return the equipment. So in theory, sounds great. In practice, it gets a little tricky because somebody who's making a future reservation, it's not like all the resources become available at a certain time. It could be staggered based upon all the allocations. That's what we've been trying to do. It's not 100% perfect. We're looking at how to improve upon it.
Right. Yeah. We for our field equipment, like we have our studio on site, obviously, and the field equipment, which is based out of the site, respective site. We actually made a new checkout center strictly for virtual recordings, like Zoom recordings and stuff, just so it could function independently with what is it, the granularity periods. Like we do sessions in either 60-minute or 90-minute, depending on the patron class. So we just have some producers that are, because we do have a 30-minute advance limit, they say, okay, well, give me every Thursday at 6:30 from now to the end of the month. It's like, well, I would like to, but then again, there's other, patrons and producers that we try to serve that just either haven't got to it yet, because they're all just trying to just find a time. And just like even today, just as something as, if we did set it to we would effectively have to set a term every month of the year, but it still takes that term as a month in itself and not over like a 4-week period.
Yeah, the sort of the challenge is how do we maximize the use of equipment while also ensuring no one monopolizes it and everyone can get access to it.
$1 million question.
Yeah, and let me know how you perfectly figure that out.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing, because we thought before, if we didn't know we could overlap terms, that if you set the term from January 1 to January 31, then February is quote unquote closed. That if you're mid-month of January, that you can't book out halfway across February. I think we'll definitely implement the terms at the beginning and end of the month, which kind of helps our cause. Sort of. I mean, it really only helps our cause as far as like at the beginning of the month. But yeah, that's the kind of the issue that we've kind of always been plagued with, just being able to maximize distribution, but also again, don't allow monopolies.
And we didn't want to have just arbitrary return dates where, like you were saying, someone drops it off and then they're back the next day to take it, because it's like, okay, that doesn't help us from an efficiency standpoint to have to clean and process the equipment.
Yeah, like we kind of had it always for pre-COVID, we kind of dealt with this manually because we never really used Portal. And then since COVID, we launched, or we kind of reconfigured Portal, and we've been more reliant on the patron class settings. And this has just been one that's kind of risen from that.
So just a quick question. So just a couple other policies, just thinking about this. What do you know what your current max checkout reserve is? So what is the
For any type of resource that we offer?
yeah, so like a RAID, what would your max typically be?
The mat will depend if it were a field camera, which would be at either like the Lehman, Mercy, or Sobro site, it would be a 24-hour reservation. If it's the studio at any one of those sites, it would be 1 hour with a 2-hour limit. But if it were the virtual studio resource via the virtual services checkout center, then it would be a maximum of 90 minutes.
And when we think about like within a month, how many reservations you would want somebody to have? Do you have kind of an ideal number? Would it be like 2, 3? What would?
Well, it depends on what they're when they produce content for us, they are classified as either a weekly submission, bi-weekly submission, or monthly submission.
Got it.
Then what ends up happening is those weekly producers, they, of course, if you're producing content, you want to get, your content kind of sorted in advance. So then they try to just book out 4 weeks straight, as opposed to someone who's like a bi-weekly or even a monthly producer. They're not looking to do as, to be not as prepared, but, in such a granular fashion that a lot of these dates that, again, that Thursday evening ends up being unavailable because John Smith had booked that every Thursday evening 4 weeks straight.
Got it. So that makes sense. A couple quick tips as we're thinking about policy. If we do want to use like the patron reserve limit per term or usage limit per term, you might want to think about using your max checkout reserve and like multiplying that by the number of days you would want them. So like if for studios, right, you only allow 1 hour, but you want to allow a max 2, then you would probably want to set your per term reserve limit or your per term usage limit to 2 hours. So then that way, right, you're saying you can have up to 2 hours, whether that's one long 2-hour reservation or 2 within the month, right? You could have that set with the 2 policies working together. Does that make sense?
Sort of, yeah.
Question.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
As far as I remember, you recommended creating the terms based on months for January and February. If we were to do that, that would be recognized under the system as a schedule, as a holiday schedule, correct?
No, what I'm recommending we do is we add in a term. So not a holiday schedule, but rather a term. So those can be added within the Checkout Center calendar tab. So not a holiday schedule like under the admin Checkout Center calendar, but rather just a term which is separate from your Checkout Center schedule. Does that make sense?
And that would show up in the calendar itself?
So it wouldn't, right, be visible to students or staff. It's just kind of used for those per term policies. Does that make sense?
And if we were to set our max allocation per patron, would that follow under the term policy? Or rather, the term window?
Yeah, so we have a couple different policies we would adjust. So there's the max checkout reserve. So that's the max checkout reserve time you can have. So if it's up to 2 days here, the longest allocation you could have is 2 days. And what I recommend is kind of using this as a baseline to then set your usage limits per term. Does that make sense?
Okay, I think it does.
Yeah, and we can definitely reach out to you all because I know these are pretty specific to your needs, and we're always happy to work with you to help get those policies set in a way that meets your needs.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's like a school that never closes, but then there's these 2 students or number of students that want to use the specific gear, and there's no technical way to stop them.
Those are your power users.
Yeah, which is not a bad thing, but serving the public and stopping
We definitely
monopoly.
have those students that figure out how to like get through the system to achieve what they're wanting and whatnot. Sometimes not what you expected.
Yeah, and then it doesn't help that when they're not very active on their email, so that when we do disapprove it via the portal, they quote unquote look at it late, and then they hit us with the I didn't see the email, I thought it was approved, type of thing. It's like,
you hear from them when they need equipment. You don't hear from when they have to bring it back. Yeah.
Yep. When they have a guest who's coming from, the tri-state area or whatever, from somewhere that it has a very specific time that, again, turning them away to not produce content is not a part of our MO. So it's just one of those things that we're just trying to find a way to have the system say, you've had enough, but try again soon.
Okay, I just got another idea from chat, and I do want to bring this one up. So kind of pivoting off that idea we had about setting our terms per month, kind of with that same idea, you could set a longer term. So maybe think of your term being an entire calendar year. So January 1st all the way up to December 31st of 2021. And then when you set your policies of your patron reserved limit per term, you could be a little bit more stricter to only allow up to 4 or up to 2 reservations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but 2 reservations over the course of the year would definitely not work because we have multiple producers that are producing, a show per week, like once a week they're submitting.
So the patron reserved limit per term actually works a little bit differently. So time is only calculated or is counted against this policy when those allocations are in a reservation state. So once they're picked up, they're no longer counted towards this policy, and they would be able to make more. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 2. You could do something more reasonable like 4. Does that make sense?
To chime in, go ahead, Louis.
No, I didn't say anything.
I think I understand what Brittany's getting at. In the past, like we had 20-inch C-stands, which we have a smaller variant of those, and we'd limit people on the number they could make in a reservation. But then we took the limits off at pickup because the assumption was, well, it's a Monday or the week before you reserve it, but then come Friday, hey, if nobody else has reserved it, take it. It's the problem is that doesn't work as well now because we're doing everything by reservation.
So, okay. I guess, Ablay, we're gonna have to dig into this to see like
a little bit
we have another checkout center set up to do testing. It's just kind of it's 2 different settings again, like giving the most access but also limiting access. They don't necessarily make good partners.
Especially when somebody else is wanting to access the equipment. It's less of an issue when nobody else is asking, hey, keep the equipment, but if others have need, how do we... One thing I haven't looked at in a long time, Brittany, maybe you can help explain, is can users extend their checkouts via PIR within the framework we set?
So are you asking about renewals in Patron Portal?
Yes.
So at this time, patrons cannot perform renewals in Patron Portal, but that is an open feature request.
That potentially could provide a more efficient pathway to solving this because, again, if right now they have to reach out to us, we have to manually check, can we extend it? Whereas if they could do it themselves, it allows the equipment to stay out until someone puts in an order in the future that would then block that renewal. Just an idea.
Okay, sorry to monopolize all the time. Trying to non-monopolize equipment.
That's no problem. And we can reach out to you after our session today too, because I know since these are really specific questions for your checkout center.
Thanks.
Speaking about renewals, did that button change or is it my imagination?
The renewal button in WebCheckout did change, and I think it changed in version 10.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and open up a checkout. So we can renew, but we now need to use the edit checkout button. This is going to allow you to renew and also make checkouts. However, when you do extend that return time, the action button is going to change depending on if a renewal was performed. So let's say you edit the checkout and you just add, say, headphones or another item onto the allocation. You're going to see the action button show as save update, and also the renewal count is not going to go up. But if instead we go ahead and perform a renewal, meaning that we extend that return time, then this action button is going to change and show as save renewal, right? And then after we save, we're going to see that renewal count adjusted based on the fact that we extended the return time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it just,
so it did change.
We jumped from 9 to 11 last week and it threw me off the first time I had somebody requesting a renewal. I couldn't find it.
Got it, yes.
And another question that I think might be floating somewhere as a feature request is I don't need the printout when it's just a renewal.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that still happens automatically. So, and support said the only way to stop it is to just stop all of them. There's no way to just not print renewals.
Yeah, the setting is enabled per checkout center. So it is a policy per checkout center. Do you usually print out the agreement forms? Is that what you typically do?
Yeah, so it's set to automatically print at a checkout, which now in COVID times, we're not really using them. So I'm contemplating turning it off. But I mean, in general, when somebody's at the counters checking something out, we have them sign the paper. When they email or call for a renewal, they're not there to sign the paper. There's no purpose in having the paper. So.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely take those notes so that the printout does not automatically populate when performing a renewal. And my apologies. It looks like there's a feature request for this already. So we're going to go ahead and add your feedback to that feature request.
It might even be my
awesome.
feature request. I don't know.
Perfect. And this is ASA, is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and add your feedback to that feature request.
It is ASA's request. We labeled it from Bloomsburg.
Perfect.
Just wondering if
didn't
any
catch that.
not really.
ASA makes a very good point. Another challenge, it wasn't a priority, but now it maybe is rising again, is how do we get signatures from people on orders? And we don't want to do physical things back and forth. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk in the past about using the agreement check, and that's certainly something, having a blanket agreement, but traditional rental houses will have you sign for every order you do. And we'd like to try to eventually get to a way to do that. The challenge is that requires a whole infrastructure and document management and digital signatures that, I'd love to hear what others are doing and how we'd approach that, because we don't have anything like that currently.
So it looks like Rob Morris in our chat did mention that he does e-signatures. Rob, do you have any more information you'd want to provide about that?
Yeah, so we do electronic, like e-signatures. So we, after they pick up the items, I work for Toyota, we email them the PDF and they sign it electronically and they email it back to us.
So you kind of email them the form, is that correct? And then they
Correct.
have
Yep.
to sign it?
Yep.
Another option that another one of my clients actually implemented is within their terms and conditions. So instead of saying by clicking below, right, you're agreeing to terms and conditions, this field says something like, I have signed and attached the agreement form, and we've actually added their specific agreement form as a URL, so a hyperlink here that they can access and download, and then they upload it as an attachment. And that's something that one of my other clients is doing. So they have their students fill out a complete form and then add it as an attachment as part of their order. Would something like that be applicable at Art Center?
Possibly. When you had that little agreement check up there, does that correlate to within WebCheckout for the agreement check?
Yeah, so this is just a custom property. So this doesn't correlate to a specific setting. So rather this correlates directly to a custom property. So this custom property is then visible in the other information tab. So you can see if the patron checked that box, right? And you can make it required by clicking here. And then you can view any attachments added to the order through Patron Portal in the Attachments tab. And then what my client, I believe, did just to kind of add to help them out is on the front page. They actually included that field on the front page, noting that that agreement form had been received, just so that they're seeing that directly on the front page, if that makes sense.
That's certainly a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my clients just started doing that. I don't believe they're on the call today, but that is something they have started to implement this semester.
A question, does your client has to upload that document before they submit the request?
Yeah, so we actually added this as an attachment during their training. So they had a PDF and we uploaded it and created a URL in WebCheckout by just uploading that file. And we created the hyperlink HTML together during one of their trainings. So they provided me with the document and then we just helped them during their training session add it into the Patron Portal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect, makes sense.
It
Thank you.
works really well. If I can jump in, Brittany, that's been not a lifesaver, but definitely saving paper in that once they agree to that, that's basically our terms and conditions that would have been in paper form in the past. And it's kind of a replacement for electronic signature as well for us here at Wayne State.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Perfect. So it looks like we only have about 2 minutes left on our call here today. Are there any other final thoughts, questions, concerns that you wanted to add the group or that you wanted to discuss with the group with our final few moments? All right, well, if there's no further questions, thank you all so much for your time today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and a great Friday tomorrow. And as a quick reminder, this call is being recorded and we're going to make it available on Monday, November 16th, and we'll be emailing you all with that information. So have a great day and an even better weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.